So in last week's video, I talked a bit about why it's necessary for humanity's survival to expand to space, due to overpopulation and the need for resources. So this video, I'm going to be talking a bit about what are some of the things that we need to overcome to make space travel an everyday thing. So the number one thing would be escaping Earth's gravity. I mean, gravity is a great thing. Without it here on Earth, we would just float away. Our cars would float away. There would be nothing weighing it down. And without it in our universe, our atoms couldn't stay together, we couldn't stay together, our planets wouldn't form, our stars wouldn't form either. It's a curse though when you actually want to get to space and start expanding. Leaving Earth's gravity is a huge thing that we have to overcome. That's why we invented rockets, and rockets have done a fairly good job. I mean, we've made them pretty efficient in the last 60-50 years. We've gotten them cheaper than they were, but they're still really inefficient, and there's still a lot that we have to do to make them better. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket currently supplies the International Space Station under the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program. Currently, a Falcon 9 rocket costs $62 million per launch and can lift payloads of 55,000 pounds to low Earth orbit. So the problem with this is the extreme cost. For example, rocket fuel only takes up about 0.3% of the total cost, making it only a couple $100,000. So why is it so expensive? Well, boosters, everything like that add up. And once they fall back down to Earth after a successful flight, they usually get damaged in Earth's atmosphere or when they hit the Earth's surface, making them unsalvageable. So basically, it's like going on vacation. Every time you go on vacation, you have to buy a new car. That can add up quite a bit. So that's why we want to look at stuff like reusable rockets. But there's a ton of technological hurdles that have to be overcome. I mean, just ask Elon Musk about that. So what are the solutions? What can we do about making this? So one technology that's probably the most advanced and the most upcoming would be reusable rockets. And there are two main companies working on that, one being Blue Origin and the other being SpaceX. So how Blue Origin works is it has a pressurized capsule on top of a booster. And after a 2.5-minute flight, the booster and the pressurized capsule separate, and then the booster then free falls back down to Earth, and after a couple of minutes, its boosters kick in and it has a controlled landing. And what happens with the pressurized capsule is it comes down via parachute, they can be refueled and then reused again. So SpaceX works in a similar fashion, where the first stage would return to the launch pad after a couple of minutes after a successful flight. So the second stage would follow after a couple of hours after orbital realignment. So the long-term goal here is to be able to make it so that both boosters come back down to Earth, they can be refueled and then reused again, making it extremely cheap for space travel. So that's why reusable rockets would be an incredible breakthrough. They would bring costs way down. We would be able to use the same rockets over and over again after successful flights. We are getting closer to a reusable rocket future thanks to companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. Another idea would be air launches. Air launches would be a lot easier than rockets because they would avoid the low and high density atmosphere on their way up to space. Shuttles and rockets would also avoid extra drag and high ambient pressures. Carrier aircrafts are easier to launch than rockets because they are less subject to weather such as strong winds and heavy rainfall. Another option would be space planes. Space planes are a reusable launch plane similar to the retired space shuttle. The only problem with space planes is they have a lot of technological hurdles to get over. Space planes are expected to be prone to high dynamic pressure, excessive heat, and heat flow loads on sensitive areas of the planes, which would not be a good thing. There's still a lot of work to be done in this area, but if it could be done correctly, it could be efficient and a cheap way to get to space. So now that we've talked about some of the more realistic ideas and upcoming technology, let's talk about some of the more sci-fi, crazy, expensive ideas. One of them being a space elevator. A space elevator is a proposed type of space transportation system. How it would work is you would have one point connected to Earth somewhere near the equator, the other point connected just outside of geostationary orbit. A space elevator would be amazing. The only thing is it's going to be about 35,000 kilometers in length. That's going to be a pretty long ride. The only problem here to make such a device possible is the materials needed would have to be lighter and stronger than any material that we possibly know of. So if we could actually build a space elevator, it would have huge benefits such as being able to transport people, materials, and resources up to space to a large space station orbiting Earth. It would be a lot cheaper than rockets because rockets currently cost about $11,000 to get 1 pound up to space. A space elevator would cost about $100 to get a pound up to space. But there's quite a few hurdles that we have to overcome with cost, finding the materials to build such such a device out of and having enough materials to build it out of. But if it could actually be created, it would have huge benefits and it would be amazing. So the last space transportation system on our list uses the same mechanics of a coil gun or a rail gun to accelerate an object to extremely high speeds by creating an electromagnetic field. This device could accelerate an object such as a spacecraft or a space shuttle up towards space at an extremely high speed. The issue with making this device is the cost. It'll be extremely expensive to make such a big thing. It's going to need to be extremely long, extremely big to accelerate the objects fast enough so that they can get up towards space. If it doesn't completely get up to space, it could then use rocket boosters to then get it the extra couple of miles. And these are just some of the very many possibilities for space transportation systems. There are new possibilities being thought up of every single year. Basically, what we want is a reusable, cheap, and efficient way that we can get to space and go between Earth and space over and over and over again. Personally, my 3 favorite space transportation systems would be space planes, space elevators, and space railguns. We are so incredibly lucky to live in the time that we do, to be surrounded with incredible technology, to be able to see things that we would have never even thought are possible, to be able to go on missions to outer space, to see Mars. And that was all thanks to people throughout history. Great people who were able to push the limits and dare to go farther, to still be ambitious. Don't forget that we all make a difference. Every single one of us has a part to play. Each one of us can make a difference, big or small. So keep dreaming, stay ambitious, and don't forget to look up.